So, bit of an update on the BMW twin turbo kit. We've got an engine block now, which is what we are hoping to get fairly early on, but proved not to be so easy. Of course, these engines are still fairly valuable, so getting ones that aren't valuable is quite hard, and you can't really spend thousands of pounds on an engine just to sit it here. But we have now got a complete block, head, cover, sump, the lot. We've even got engine mounts and things, and that makes it a lot easier. Some of the things you absolutely must have the car for, in terms of that steering column clearance that we talked about before, and other bits and bobs like getting downpipes to line up, etc. But when it comes to the kind of finer intricacies of fitment, manifolds, coolant lines, we can do all that just with a block, and it's much easier when it's not on the car. Obviously, because the BMW is tilted over at an angle, you have to do everything from the underneath, and that makes things a bit harder because you've always got gravity. Things become a lot heavier when you're holding them over your head, and these turbos are quite heavy. So now that we've got it on the block, we can kind of show in a bit more detail some of the challenges and what we've kind of got as like a rough prototype to try. So at the minute, you can still see that it's kind of very rough in how it's all put together. But some of the problems we've had really are this engine mount and the steering column. So the steering column off the steering rack comes up basically here. So there's no real room for this actuator. At the minute, I've just got it bolted on some thin aluminium plates that I can kind of bend it and manipulate it out of the way. And if we go for something too permanent, it's impossible to kind of manipulate it. But yeah, so that's hopefully how that's going to sit. We've got some clearance. It's not as much clearance as you'd like to have, but that's almost never going to happen. There are going to be compromises in having two really big turbos where once before two really small turbos sat. But we've got clearance on the engine mount. Again, not a lot. We've got basically no clearance between the turbine air housing and the engine mount here, and then the same on the compressor cover. No real clearance there. This is a little shroud which covers the rubber engine mount, so we need to keep that because that's like a bit of a heat shield. But you can see the downpipe clears. This ICE Engine Works plastic downpipe we've got at the minute, and it's super close to the compressor cover on this side. Again, I can't really move this turbo any further forward, and I can't move this one any further back. So yeah, this is kind of where we're stuck with them. The manifolds definitely aren't ideal yet, and kind of the final design that we'd want. We can tweak them and get them a bit better, I'm sure, but I think maybe in the long term we'd look for a different solution in terms of, rather than fabricating them, maybe have something casted, but that really depends on the demand for this kit as such, because it's a pretty heavy investment in terms of having parts casted. So that really is where we're at with it. It's we've still got a fair bit to work out. Oil returns, all the block fittings, the coolant lines. We've still got to make up this downpipe, weld up these manifolds, more or less as they are. We can straight line this one a bit through here. At the minute, I've just got two 90-degree bends, and we can kind of straight line that a little bit more yet, which will improve that. Again, make it easier to fabricate. And we may change the size of these primaries. At the minute, I've got a kind of larger primary size on the rear turbo and a smaller primary size on the front turbo, and that obviously sounds like it maybe wouldn't be the best. The reason I've done that is because I would have rather used the smaller primary size on this rear turbo, but given how it's ended up being such a short manifold, there will obviously be another piece which comes into the centre here. Because it's such a short manifold, I need some internal volume. I need somewhere for gas to go, or it's just going to back up, and we're going to have really high manifold and EGTs and things like that, manifold pressures and EGTs. So it really is just kind of prototyping. We're going to basically weld this up more or less as it is, put it on the car, put it on the dyno, and see how it works. I'm sure we'll be able to make improvements, and then it's just a case of how far do we want to go to improve it. I would like to do some cast manifolds for this, because I do think they would come out a lot nicer and we would end up with a better end result. But there's still so much fabrication involved in this turbo intake. Both of these compressor covers will more or less have to be modified. We've got bracketry to make or weld onto the turbo as well. We may be able to create a bracket for this, which would come off these 2 bolts. But again, it's quite a complex thing to make. So again, for a prototype, we'll just kind of weld it. But yeah, that's pretty much where we're at with it. So hopefully, I mean, I did want it kind of complete for the end of June. Delays with getting an engine block kind of slowed that down a bit, and workload here has increased significantly. But I'm hoping that really we can get this running and on the dyno maybe for the end of July. And then if all goes well, we'll get the car back, get it all stripped off and look at what improvements we need to make or put it into production.